Welcome back. I make these videos because I just love sailing and I want to share it with as many people as I possibly can so you can enjoy sailing as well. So get yourself comfortable, sit back and enjoy. If you end up with a question, just ask me in the comments and I will answer. Today I'm taking the boat out for a test sail. I say a test sail, it's my first sail of the year and I've done some alterations. I've added a deck track and I've had the sail altered just to see how things will work. More about that later on in the video. Hiya everyone, welcome to this crazy world today. All this wind we're having and what's going on with Russia. I think we need something a little bit different, so I'm pleased to say that I've got a little bit of deck track. I've got my sails back, I've had them washed and I've had the forestay length, the luff shortened on the Genoa so that it'll fit mine and so that it'll fit the deck track where obviously the foot was too long. I've had it new bits of deck track which I'm going to put on today, hopefully. And if remember the carpet for the van that I put on in the front cabin, on the wall in the front cabin down here, it's 2 degrees outside and it's lovely and warm to the touch, so that's an absolute success, that. So I don't think the opaqueness of the carpet makes much of a difference. Its thermal properties are fantastic. All I can feel is the warmth instantly when I touch it, so I'm well pleased with that. So hopefully I'll be able to get these sails on a little bit later, and in the meanwhile I'm going to have to try and get these deck tracks on. Now I'm extending the deck track with short pieces. They should have been a bit longer than that, but somebody made a mistake and I'd waited long enough for the deck track, so it's going on a little bit shorter than it should have been in the plan. I'll explain to you in a minute. Well, this is my existing deck track and this is my new piece which I want to add on. I'll be needing a little bit of gap between the two tracks, so I'm going to put a little bit of track even between those two tracks to join them up. Well, why would I do this? I'll probably put it that way round. Leave this gap here as a bit of a drain. There's a little angle change on the corner there and that's why I need a gap. To get the track as far outboard as I could do, I needed to move this block from here. So I've stuck it in here. Now the track can go where it was. If you look down the track, you can see the angle change halfway down, and I've got to make sure that that car can move from one side to the other side around the corner, which it's not meant to do. And then the only thing left to do is get really brave or mad, grab a drill and stick a hole in the deck. I'm going to drill this end first for a particular reason. Once I've drilled it, I can drop a bolt in it and I can swivel the track then so that it can marry up with the existing track on the other end, and the car can hopefully then travel from one track to the other track smoothly. I'm going to put a bit of sealant around every hole along the way and a dot in between for bonding, and hopefully that's sufficient to stop the water going through. I haven't put too much sealant where the plunger holes are because I don't want it squirting up the plunger holes and not being able to drop the plunger in. I drop it into place visually by looking through the holes and letting them line up with the holes below. The bolts will then true it all up when I start putting the bolts in. Each bolt I'll cover the thread more than halfway down with some silicone before I put it in place. When I've siliconed up the bolts and shoved every single one of them in, I have to go underneath with washers and nuts to put some on the bottom there. There's not much of them 2-inch bolts sticking out the bottom, but here goes for the washers and nuts. I just normally leave silicone to dry off, but I'm going to pull this off with my finger here because I want to slide the car over the top of it and make sure it's running okay. I let silicone dry and then I chop it off normally with a blade, it's easier. But I feel a bit anxious at the moment that the car's got to travel from one track to the other track. And it can't fall off because the car is actually longer than the gap. That was sort of a little plan anyway, and by the time I put this intermediate piece in, then the car should be able to travel across not too interrupted at all, while articulating a little bit of a corner. Well, that's what they look like. Not too bad. I've still got the excess sealant to take off, and what I need to find out now is, did he work? If I take him out on a bit of a trial sail, are they going to actually set the shape of the sail for me? I've done both sides and they both got the gap in the middle, so I'll be telling everybody that gap is to drain the water out. Dead simple. Warmed up now, sun shining. No reason for a coat, but I've got one on because I need to carry it up the car. And I've got my sort of deck tracks done, and I've got my sails on, so I'm ready for a sail. The next morning, getting all my lines ready and my fenders off from all the extra lines and fenders that I've had on with the bad weather took a bit of time. Engine suitably warmed, I get ready to cast off. Look at that sky, it's not a pretty sky. There's gusts of wind and there's not meant to be, so I presume it's going to die down, but I keep feeling quite strong wind coming down the river. It's supposed to be a southerly, and it's supposed to be around a force 2 to 3, which I think is okay for a first sail of the season, that is. And also a bit of a test sail, obviously, because the Genoa has been altered and the deck tracks have been altered to go with it, so we'll have to see how it all works. The boat's already moving back before I even put it in gear because of the wind blowing on its nose. And there shouldn't be that much wind blowing on its nose. Oh well, I'm sure it'll die down. I checked 3 forecasts and they all said the same thing. As I get to about here, the wind starts picking up, and then it actually starts blowing on the bow quite strong and shoved my bow across when I wasn't expecting it. The wind here starts pushing me hard to port, and I find myself at a point where I've got to push the revs on in order to get the keel to grip so I don't make my way over to the boats on my port side. I'm starting to get a funny feeling that it's not really the right weather to be going out for a first sail today. Something's just gnawing at me that little bit. The colour of the sky, the way the clouds are forming, the gusts, it doesn't seem right. This little leisure, only a week ago, was like this. I certainly wouldn't be going out if it was still like this, but it's supposedly moved into the Irish Sea now, so we can. Going out this morning, I feel like I haven't had very good steerage. The rudder wasn't biting very well at first. I'm not sure whether I got quite a bit of weed down there. It should have been out the water and cleaned really. Well, there's a strong ebb considering it's a neap tide taking me out. So keep myself on my toes till I get into some clear water to finish tidying up the boat, I think. There's a little bit of a breeze as well, so there's plenty of sailing hopefully when I actually get out there. So speak to you in a bit. I've put it on auto helm for a bit. It's not down there, it's inside, isn't it? But I switched it on. It doesn't seem to be held in a brilliant heading at the moment, and I think there's a lot possibly new sandbanks that I'm going to have to watch out for, so I need to stay on my toes. After all the storms we've had, I'm quite sure the sands will have shifted quite a bit. And who's up ahead of us as usual? I don't know if you can see him in the distance there. As we exit the estuary, the wave pattern looks set in a southwesterly direction. The wind forecast for today was light airs on a southerly basis, so it must be the hills are shaping the direction of this southerly and turning it round a little. Within seconds, more or less, the wind drops down and the sea falls calm. Just what we were expecting. Nice light airs. Well, if I get round the next corner, instead of facing southwest, I'll put the sails up and see where we're up to. Maybe I was wrong to have misgivings about the weather. Looks like it's going to be a nice day after all. I'm motoring along. We've got wind averaging between 12 and 18-ish knots, varying a little bit. and we're pushing into it, so obviously we've got 4 knots of our own to take off that, so it's topping out about 16 knots from about 8 knots, so not a lot at the moment, not a lot. Sea state looks fairly slight, so when we get a turn in and be able to put them sails up, it looks like we'll get a bit of a good sail. Obviously hit a gap between 2 mountains here, and the cold wind's obviously coming down like a steam train and picking up a bit of speed as it goes. It's pushing us a little bit harder and making a little bit of chop where it's actually piling up in one area. Slowed me down as well, took another knot off me speed. It's bumpied up the water a bit, which might help my log, because obviously my log's not reading very well at 0.4 knots, 0.3 knots. I think it's covered in weed as usual. But a bit of bouncing around hopefully knocks a bit of that weed and mud off the bottom of the boat and lets me go a little bit freer. So maybe roll on a few more crashy waves. I can see the water clears up in half a mile, so I'll be through this in a minute, and hopefully then it might be time to get the sails up. I'm a little excited to try these new deck tracks and see if they make any difference to my altered foresail. Tarka's just put up a small amount of foresail, obviously to test the water. Well, turn the engine off. The wind's whistling a little bit in the rigging, and doesn't seem to be tons of wind out here. We've got 21 knots. I've just put a bit of foresail up, and it looks a little bit baggy in the wind at the moment, because we keep rounding a little bit in the gusts. We got 24 now. Just a minute ago it gusted 34, but it doesn't allow you to want to set the sail comfortably to not know where you're going to be for wind. So I'm actually making a little bit of pace, so as long as I'm around 3 to 4 knots I'm quite happy just to stay on the safe side for my first sail. Although I don't want to make too much leeway either, which I don't seem to be doing. I still seem to have a nice 20 knots so on the beam here, and it looks like Tarka's going round in circles and putting up more sail. I don't understand what's going on with him. I think he considered the air really light, so he pushed his bows into it and got his main up. It's not all the way up to the top though. It's about 2 reefs he's got in it, so he's still a little bit cautious, but it looks like he's pulled the rest of his, or nearly all the rest of his genoa out. And now he looks like he hasn't got enough wind to get back on course. I don't understand. Right, well I've pulled about 70% of my main out now and put a bit more foresail out. The air is definitely getting lighter now that we're getting away from the hills. I'm still making good headway though. He looks like he's actually come to a stop in the water and he's just bobbing there, like he's got no control left. I'm starting, however, to feel like I'm slowing down, like the wind's easing, or even giving up, and we're coming into some kind of a hollow patch. He just beat me to it. There still seems to be wind behind me though, just nothing in front of me, so it just seems to be starting to give up the ghost a bit. Well, there you go, who'd have believed it? The auto-helm's going bonkers, no wind left in the sails, the water's flattening out. It all changes in a second. Not just as the pressure changed in the wind, the direction seems to have put a bit more west in it as well. On a day that's supposed to be just southerlies, I think we're virtually stopped a knot. Well, it looks like Tarka's found enough wind to gain control again, and it looks like his sails are setting, so he'll be off again soon. I've got no wind at all now, just about 1 knot. Not going to go anywhere with that. Not sure whether the bubbles are going forwards or backwards. Over there though, I can definitely see a lot of wind on the water, a lot of white caps. It's only half a mile away. I get a feeling of a little bit of wind on the back of my neck. That's behind me. That's more like an easterly. This is crazy. Nevertheless, I'll go with it. I swap the sheets around and I try and run. I say try and run. It's the lightest bit of wind and it's just picking the sail up. And it might move the boat, but it certainly won't give me any pace. But sometimes it's nice just to keep the boat in the right direction. I still reckon there's a lot of wind over there. Will it come over here and give us a blow? Oh, and yes, I've still got a couple of turns in the mainsail and a couple of turns in the foresail, because I still don't trust this weather, not after we had them gusts earlier on. Tarka looks like he might be getting a little bit of wind there. He's now pointing in the right direction. And seems like he's actually moving as well, although his sails aren't proper full. And my jib's just backed, which means the wind's just come from in front of me now, and it was behind me a second ago. But at least it'll bring the bow round. I'm sure those white caps over there will actually look like they're starting to get closer to us, which means there should be wind sooner rather than later. And now that the bow's coming round, I could do with unbacking this sail and try and make use of whatever's coming. As I look over towards Tarka, I can't help thinking the white caps look like they're catching him up, and he's definitely got a nice full Genoa there. Well, he's reefed a little bit, and he's still reefed on his mainsail, because I think he's like me. Not a little bit of a trusty day for the weather today. But he's moving, and the white caps are getting even closer to him, so he'll be getting a bit more wind. But if they're getting closer to him, they can't be far off me, and I feel like I'm actually starting to move a little now. Here we go, 5 knots is moving to 10 knots, and we're making a bit of headway, which is very nice, in the right direction, with a good southwesterly, which is not even forecast. Well, I'm not going to alter my sails. I'm going to leave them set on a short plan at the moment, just because when I look 2 ways, it's 2 different days. What do I mean by that? Well, up in the air, it's nice and blue to the starboard, which is my right over there, and the sea looks lovely and calm. But if I turn round and look the other way, over there, to my port, the sea looks more aggressive and the sky's more aggressive, and it's not holding much charm in it. Is my brother just fitted a turbocharger to that boat? He looks like he's off in his shot. How the hell's he screaming away like that? And he's well heeled. I'm still just bobbing along in 10 knots of wind. Should I let these reefs out? Shouldn't I? Shouldn't I? He hasn't, and he seems to be going very well. Oh well, in for a penny, in for a pound. There's my new bit of deck track there in action, and I've pulled the foresail all the way out. I've left the main reefed, just in case. Well, I think that might be just about long enough. That might be that bit of track to actually do the job. The sail seems set quite well, although the luff needs tightening up a little bit there. Well, with a little bit of luck, I think I might just be able to keep this sail after all. We need a bit more settled weather to get a better test than this in, and some lighter airs as well, and maybe even a couple of heavier airs, but on a more controlled day, eh? Well, I can see why he was flying. The wind's getting up a little bit more now, pushing a little bit harder. We've still got the full foresail out, and the boat seems to be creaming along quite nicely. There's a little bit of a lump in the water, not much though, but we're well heeled. Well, the Genoa definitely works on a close reach, and there's plenty of slack left in the sheet to turn around and say I could get a bit closer winded than this as well. Well, that's to be careful what you wish for, you just might get it. The wind's still increasing and so are the waves. I've put a couple of curls in the foresail, but they've not gone in too well because the luff was loose, and as you can see I've got these funny stripes on it now. It is, however, still pushing me into this bumpy sea, and I'm making headway, so I'm quite happy with that. You'd have to have good eyes now to see where Tarka's got to, because I can't see him anywhere. I can see why he shot off though. He got a hold of this wind well before me and he was away. Well, that's me excuse for not being behind him, I suppose. And you got to remember, he's got a nice clean bottom as well. I don't know what mine looks like, but I'm doing alright. I've got a bit of pace up. I'm over 5 knots and that makes me happy. 26 knots of apparent wind, take me 5 up. We've got 20 knots of wind, that's not bad either. And we seem to be flying along lovely. And my new bit of deck track's doing an absolutely grand job. I'm glad I fitted it. And if I'd have had the whereabouts to tighten up that foresail halyard before we set off, I'd have a better shape and a little bit more pull as well. Those stripes in the foresail will drive me mad now, knowing that I've got a loose halyard. And worse, knowing that I could have done something about it before. I can't do nothing about it now. Still can't get over that grey day to the port and that lovely blue skies and blue day to the starboard. It's like 2 different days either side of the boat. And it looks like there's more white caps and more waves, which means more wind ahead to come. Oh, what fun we're having. I forgot what fun sailing was. I just took my first wave to wake me back up again. I put a few more rolls in that foresail, so there's not much up there. Still got a bit of main up, well, a lot of main up, and she's blowing up a little bit. There's always bits of storm that are knocking around. Well, 31 knots, take away 5 or 6 from my pace over the ground, and we've got about 24 knots of wind. That's about what the gusts were meant to be today, so that's pretty much correct, I think. The wind feels like it's increased a little bit more now. Swallow really is power and hard to windward, so credit to her. I think she's heeling a lot though, so I think I might ease it a little bit. If I put a -10 on the auto helm, she'll come around to wind a little bit, and I'll be able to put another curl or 2 in that foresail. My plan's to slip the sheet, and with my left hand there you can see me winding the winch. That's got the reefing line for the forestay in it, so it's actually winding the forestay a little bit. Makes life easy when the wind's blowing hard. The last thing you want to do is have a loose sheet, because it flogs the hell out of the foresail. To do this on a starboard tack, you got to run the reefing line off the foresail right across the cockpit to the other winch, or make yourself a separate winch at the back just for the roller reefing, one of the two. Need to move the block a little bit further forward now. Probably that's not enough, but we'll wind in the sheet and see how it sets. Well, the foot's flattened out, but the leech is a bit flappy. I still think we're a little bit close to the wind though, but that car really needs to go forward on the track a bit more now. I'm thinking, how do I move the car forward, past the gap in the track, especially if the sheet is flogging in my hand and flogging the car, it might come away. This is the method I've come up with in my head after having a little ponder. I'm going to take the port side sheet and I'm going to pull it up so that it can take the weight or the load on the sail when I release the starboard side sheet. And the starboard side sheet then shouldn't have any snatching to it or anything, and should leave me free to manoeuvre the car as I see fit. That's controlling the sail from vicious flogging as well in 30 knots of wind. Car successfully moved up the track to the next track, back on the winch, and everything back to normal. Just let that port side sheet go, and I've got full control back on the starboard side with no hassles. Car moved from old track to new track to old track. Well, we're heeled again, the boat's comfortable again, and we're making headway into about 30 knots of wind now, 28 to 30 knots, which is doing pretty good, I think. Still haven't a clue what's happened to Tarka and where he's gone, but I think he's hiding around the other side of Puffin in the lee, but I don't know yet. most comfortable bit of sailing for your first sail out of the season. But there you go. We're motoring into, we got behind Puffin Island in a bit of lee and we dropped the sails, although there was still plenty of wind there. We got about 35 knots on the nose at the moment and we're making 3 knots, so there's over 30 knots of wind. We're punching into it, we're going to go down the straits, see what happens. Oh, Jay's over there somewhere. As you pass through Puffin Sound and into the beginning of the Menai Straits, everything just calms down. The wind's still there, but the waves have all gone. The bumpy motion's gone. The boat soon becomes a nice stable platform for you to recoup. I don't know, do the things you need to do. Uncross your legs maybe. Whatever it is, to me it's always the same thing. Get the kettle on, get a panad on the go. Oh, and a Mr. Kipling's cake always goes down well as well. The camera on the stern of the boat is a GoPro. Doesn't have the best quality of sound because it's in a little plastic case, obviously because it catches waves on a regular basis. But this is the view, ploughing down the straits from the back of the boat. It seems quite a placid view. I think there's a lot of salt water on the lens because it's a little bit blurry and it's normally a lot clearer than this. Although there's a lot of sunlight there pouring into the lens as well, and that might be part of the blur as well. You can see the bows still pushing away through the waves, spreading them out every now and then. We're against the wind and the tide, and that's what's keeping this quite flat down here, because it actually can get bumpy wind over tide on this stretch. This is the view from the bow with my other camera. It's a sort of very fresh airway. It blows straight through your ear because you haven't got any protection. Just listen to that wind howling down here. You can't feel it at all, can you? But I can. I tell you, that's enough to blow the cobwebs away quite easily. Oh well, looking forward to getting to Beaumaris now, so we can sit down and have another brew and something to eat, some lunch. This is what's really cool about a wheelhouse. You're just sitting here and everything else is out there. Motoring along into gale force winds on flattish water. Pretty cool, pretty comfortable. This patch of water's bottlenecky, if you like. It's not bottlenecky because it's opening up the land and it's actually getting wider, the sea area. It's bottlenecky because the mountains all come to it. They all push the air into the space and the air picks up as it falls into it. There's not meant to be any southwesterly here at all. Well, we've been sailing just here and we're about here at the moment. But as you can see, all the winds are over here, not where we are. So why we're getting them, I don't know. The only thing I can think is they're coming round the Clint Peninsula and following it up, follow the Menai Straits through and meeting the wind that's coming over the land, and that's why they appear to be a southwesterly. And that's a good gust right on the nose. And the boat seems to be doing quite a respectable journey through this as well. I'm still nearly making 3 knots over the ground, and that's pushing us into a knot of current and 40 knots nearly of wind, certainly 35. And in another 5 minutes it'll be back down to 10 or 15 knots. It honestly can't make its mind up what it wants to do. But it's very comfortable in here. Half an hour later, all the wind's gone and we're on moorings, having our lunch. You wouldn't even think it was the same day. Actually, it didn't stop blowing at all until we'd picked the moorings up. It's like it's got to blow while you're trying to pick the mooring up, but as soon as you're on it, it's got to go, oh, it's all over now. I think Jay's gone below for 40 winks. We've set off, but we've both only got our mainsails up at the moment, and we haven't got them all the way up either. Still reefed, and it's only got about 10 knots out now. But we're reefed for a different reason. We're reefed because we want to go slow, and that's why we just got the mains up as well. I've even got my boom quite inboard, although the wind's behind us. We need to go slow, so there's enough water ahead of us so we can sail, rather than running aground. Having the boom so inboard, though, doesn't help with the helm. It's pushing me through the water, but I've got the helm all the way over here to go in a straight line. That's not good, is it? I've paid the boom out, it's straightened the helm up, but I've picked up a bit of speed, which I actually didn't want to do. It's like a different day. It's not like the same day as this morning. The air's dropped down, or I say it's dropped down. It's a lot lighter. But Madison's looking beautiful. The sun is out, you can feel it on the back of your neck. It's lovely and warm, and the hills look smart. And as usual, RJ's not waiting, he's off. But not in any rush. There's a bank ahead of us that hasn't got enough water on for me to get over it yet. So I'm just treading water, if you like, until we get there. Then I'll probably bounce my way across it, just for fun. It's very relaxing when you're not in a hurry to get anywhere and you got all the time in the world. But sometimes that catches you up, especially when you don't go quick enough. But I think we've got enough pace at the moment. Well, we soon get to the shallow bank to cross. There's only 10 knots of wind, and it's on the beam, which is good. We've got 4.2 metres underneath us, and this is the bank. See, it moves into a bit of deeper water on the other side. We're not doing too much speed, 2.3, 2.4, but we're moving in the right direction, and the sun's going down on a lovely day. If it stays like this, it looks like we'll be ghosting our way home. For the first time today, I've got everything up, thinking that we need everything up to keep us going, because we're not absolutely flying now that the airs are nice and light. Tarka's just in front of me, but I watch every now and then and his sail's empty. When mine empty, my boat keeps a little bit more way on and I get a little bit closer to him, and it always annoys him when he knows that I'm making my distance towards him on way alone. Oh, that's the biggest gust we've had for a while. Oh, my speed's coming up to 2.8 knots. Woo, 14, 13 knots. Whey! This is the bit he dislikes. That little gust that we just had up to 14 knots has picked me up to 4 knots over the ground. Now the wind's gone back down again to 6 and 7 knots and he's sitting still. And I'm still slipping through the water with me way on, catching him up. What kind of a crazy day today's been for wind. And that sun is just about up now. Almost said goodnight to us. My sails are getting a little bit of orange glow in them. A little bit of red sky at night maybe. What did they say? Red sky at night, sailor's delight. I think both our sails are completely empty now. Mine have just gone to flog, and his are definitely flogging, and I've got no way left to overtake him. Well, the wind's come back and it's flapping me sail. So I'm going to have to give a little bit of a tug on this line to solve that. There you go, that's sorted that problem out. My luff's pulled up now, so I'm happy with that. The boat's moving through the water. My new deck tracks are doing a perfect job of giving me sail shape. And everything seems to be working lovely. What a nice end to the day. I don't think I've seen them sails set so well before. Doesn't make much difference though. He's still upwinding me and he's still sailing away. Never gonna catch him. I'll have to clean me bottom. Oh well, the sun goes down and then it goes dark. And when I say dark, I mean it goes dark. It went pitch black. Pitch black. No moon out anywhere. Pitch black. And to top it all up, the wind got back in the 30s. This nav light's easy to spot because we're passing it and it's moving, but normally when they're still and ahead of you and they hide in the lights behind them. You can just see the black shadows of the pier in the dark as they cross the lights behind them. But really, it's pitch tonight, there is no moon, and the lights that come from the land are so bright they take your vision even further away from being able to see, and it gets harder to see. The green light dead centre there just shot to the left. That's the Ganway Marina, so I'm nearly home. There it is on the left of the screen. Please subscribe, and you can go and see my past content as well as my future content if you wish, if you've enjoyed it, that is. Until next time, I bid you a fond farewell.